Alright, so welcome back to a new one on this channel, and this occasion is the Delay 104 from Moog. Everything on this guide is in chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. If you like this guide, please like and subscribe, and if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can check the QRs or everything is at the description. Alright, so the nature of this delay is a bucket brigade delay, so it's going to be analog and dark repetitions. Now, it has different sections. You can see the most common delay knobs right here, but you have your input, then you have an LFO, so you can run a modulation, then you can do CV, and then you have the all-important settings that will take this pedal or this delay from an analog, all vintage, type of delay to a more modern type of delay. So it makes sense that we start with this section, which is going to be the delay section. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm using a synthesizer, so if I play a key, it's going to sound like that. And I'm using this so we can really hear the delay effect. So when I turn it on and I play it, notice that we get the tail. Now later we're going to try this on some other sources like different synths, maybe try it on some vocals. Now you have your time control, and then you have your feedback control, which is again, very standard controls for any type of delay. The time, if I make it super short, it's going to be way too short. And if I keep going up, there is a tiny little bit of pitch detuning when I modulate the time knob. And this is because it's an emulation of a bucket brigade, an analog delay. Now, if I go all the way up and we stay on short, the repetition, the time, this is still super short. This is why you have the long right here. This is going to duplicate the times that you have right here. But, right now they're super short. We can make them long. And it's gonna be a much longer delay. Now, going up on the feedback is going to make it feedback a little bit more. Now, if I go up on the feedback, you get that analog type of sound. Going all the way up is going to make it crazy until you need, of course, to go down in the feedback. Now, since this is an analog emulation, by changing the times, even, with this switch, right? Maybe I'm going to go up on the feedback and mess with this. Super cool. Right. So that's it. This is the main controls. It's just a delay, right? We set the time, short or long, and then how much feedback we want. One tiny little critique that I can make to this plugin is that you have no representation of, the timings right here. I know that I have something right here, but I would love to get, the amount of time, the exact amount of time that I'm doing. But still, at the bottom, you have the time sync, which means that you can sync it to whatever, tempo you have in your DAW. And this works the same way. Now, the only difference is that it's going to be time synced. So the only representation of how fast and how slow you're going is the light right here. Which is cool, but I much prefer, since this is a plugin, to have the numbers right here in milliseconds or, divisions. But, it's an emulation of an analog pedal, and this is what you get on an analog pedal. So for now, I'm just gonna maybe stand right here so we can really notice the delay effect. So the drive works like a pedal, right? If you input more signal, it's going to start, crushing it and overdriving it. So when you play a sound, right here, it gives you a representation with this light of the level that it goes in. Now, if you keep going up in drive, the signal is going to be stronger, so it will affect the feedbacking and the delay sound. So it's going to come out really hot. Now, you can go all the way up and notice that it's distorting. And this will affect the input, your signal, your synthesizer, and the delayed one. So you can still go down in the output, so you can manage this a little bit better. But there is a change in tone by going up in drive. Then at the bottom, you have the other control, which is a pretty simple, standard control that you get on any delay. You can go all the way down, which means that you get no delay, but you still get the saturation of the drive, right? If you go all the way up, it's just the delayed signal. I'm gonna go a little bit down on the drive because maybe it's too much. And then you just can blend the wet and the dry. Now, the third thing that this can do is going to be the LFO. And this one is super cool, the modulation section. Now, this LFO, the main purpose of this one, is going to be to modulate the time. So with this pedal, with the Bucket Brigade pedal, when you modulate the times, you're going to be getting these inconsistencies, right? This detuning. So the LFO is going to be in charge of modulating the delay time up and down. And how we do it? Well, it's going to be the amount. So I'm going to, again, stay around there. If I go up in the amount, we start noticing that it's modulating the time. If I go up in the amount, go all the way up, it's going to be super crazy. Maybe it's a little bit too much. Now, still, again, this using an LFO to go up and down in time to modulate this knob. And how fast it's doing it is going to be the rate. It's doing it by this much. So you can go up in the rate and go really fast. Maybe I'm going to go up in pitch. And now this is the main purpose of the LFO, to modulate the time and get that, again, vintage sound. How you're modulating is going to be the LFO waveform. By default, it's going to be right here, sine wave or triangle. That's usually what you get on any, maybe on the hardware pedal. In this case, you can do a triangle if you wish. You can do a square, which is going to be a little bit harsh. Maybe I'm going to go up and down in rate. You can do a saw, which is going to be a saw down. And then you can do a ramp up. And the last option, played the wrong thing right there, is going to be random. It's very inconsistent. It's random, right? So again, the purpose of this is going to be to modulate the time and get, that modulation. Now, by going really crazy, you're going to be getting crazy sounds. And again, that's maybe the point. I'm going to go to a sine wave. Now, in my case, I like this, how it sounds, by doing just a tiny little bit. So you get that nice detuning. Still, you can LFO sync right here. If I do LFO sync, it's just like the time sync. You can sync two divisions when you go to the rate. Now I'm going to go back to default, no modulation on the LFO, and the next part is going to be the CVs that we have right here, but I think that the settings are a little bit more important than the CVs, because the CV is about modulation, but the settings really expand what this pedal or this unit can do. By default is that it's Bucket Brigade, vintage, analog, delay. Now if I go to the settings, these options will let you decide how is the main nature, how it sounds. The type, right now it's echo, which is what we get by default. And, I'm going to go up on the feedback. Alright, so if I go right there, it's echo. So it means if you have a mono signal, it's just going to be stereo. By default, the pedal is stereo, but it's going to repeat it as an echo, right? Now, then you have the ping pong, and this, again, makes the pedal, turns it into something else. I'm going to go back to echo, and then you have the tone. And this, again, really changes the sound. By default, it's going to be legacy, which is dark, true to Bucket Brigade type of delay, which is dark, right? It's just chopping in the high frequencies. But you cannot argue that this is super dark. So the tone, if I go to analog, is still, it's going to be dark, but not that much. Right? Super dark, a little bit less dark. And modern, it means that there's no high passing, low passing in this case. So it's not chopping the higher frequencies, it's a full spectrum. So now the pedal, this effect that was, pretty simple if you take a look at the interface, now you can do a little bit more, right? It has different phases. You can go modern and have brighter repetitions, or just, go all the way to analog. another thing that you get is the timing. It's going to be strict because everything that we have right here, the delay and the mount, and everything that got to do with the timing is going to be right there in the pocket. So there's no inconsistencies in time. Now, if you do loose, it will emulate a true analog gear that has inconsistencies with time. Now, it's very mild. But if you try this in the back, maybe with a kick and snare or something more rhythmical, you're going to start to notice the difference in, when it's the timing, it's a little bit loose instead of strict. Then you have the LFO polarity. It's going to be bipolar, and this is by default. So it means that if I do an LFO, I play it, the time, the LFO is going to modulate the time. And it's doing it up and down. So if I have it right here at 50%, the LFO, since it's a sine wave, is going to be doing something like this. So it's going up and down, starting from this point. This is because it's bipolar. It's going to positives and it's going to go to negatives. Now, if I go to bipolar and I maybe do something like that, maybe something like this, amount 50%, why not? And I play it. But this is super aggressive. If I go to uni, it's going to be a little bit less aggressive. Bipolar. Right? And again, all this is completely up to you, depending on what you want to do. Now, then you have the bypass mode, which is going to be normal and spill over. So if I play something and I make the feedback really long, I play it, it's going to take a little bit of time before it goes down in volume. Now, if I play it again and turn the unit off, it's going to kill the sound. If I turn it on, it's going to keep going. But, if I turn it off, it goes all the way quiet. Now, the spillover, it does the opposite. And this is something super common that you get on modern pedals. Maybe you have a toggle switch at the back. So if I activate and I play it and I turn it off, this is still going to be playing the tail of whatever we are just, processed. So it's not going to kill the sound. This, again, is something cool that you get on some pedals these days. And then last but not least, you have the feedback mode. And legacy, it means that it will go through the whole signal path. So it's the whole emulation of the real pedal. So it's darker. Maybe I'm going to get rid of the, the modulation. Right, I'm going to go a little bit less. So it's a bit darker. So if I go and compressed, if I go to modern, it's going to be a bit more brighter. So this means that when we go to legacy, it's trying to emulate the sound going through all, the different parts of the pedal. So it's going to get this saturated, degraded repetitions. But modern is going to bypass parts of the circuit. So the repetitions are a little bit cleaner. But this is darker. If I go to modern, it's cleaner. As you can see, you have a very simple panel, but you have extended controls. You can use it as a vintage analog type of pedal or delay and maybe transform this to a more modern sounding delay. So what we can do with the LFO again is to modulate the time control, but we cannot do anything else. So that's the main purpose of the CVs. We can connect or patch something in and modulate it with the source, and then we can decide the intensity with the attenuators that you have right here. Now, what you can modulate is right here with the labels. You can do the time, which is going to be this one. You can do the feedback, which is going to be this one. You can do LFO rate, again, the rate of the LFO. The LFO amount is going to be this knob. And then you have the mix, which is going to be this knob. So how it works is that you need to click on in and decide what you want to connect. In this case, since I'm not using a different pedal, you can use the LFO. Which LFO? Well, it's going to be this LFO. Maybe I'm going to go over there. I can decide to use the LFO to modulate the feedback. Why not? So I'm going to be going here and I'm going to say, I want to use the LFO to modulate the time. No, I'm going to want to modulate the feedback. So I'm going to click on this in. I'm going to select the LFO. And now notice that it's receiving the LFO. If you match the lights, this is what it's doing. It's receiving that instruction. Now, on top of that, when you use the ins, it will give you right here a visual representation of how much is modulating the feedback. Notice it's going really aggressively. So if I play it, really cool. So again, the main idea of this is to modulate some other sources, not just the time. Now, the attenuator will decide how aggressive the modulation is. In this case, is going all the way up to positive. So I can lower the instruction or the modulation by a tiny little bit, and now we are doing a little bit of modulation. And if I go to center, it's just a tiny little bit. So we can, that's why it's called an attenuator. Right? We can attenuate the modulation. Now, if I go to negative, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to take the feedback and then go down. If I play it, and this is a cool thing that you can do with this, which you cannot do on some other, units, is that maybe you want a really aggressive type of feedback. But the thing is that when you play it, the feedback is going to go crazy after a little while. So you need to manually go down to the feedback. This is what happens with, pedals. So in this case, you can still go all the way up in feedback, and at some point the LFO is gonna attenuate it for you. You don't need to do it manually, and still, get that feedback that is constantly in the back. Right? So again, this is what you can do. You can connect something right here and do a modulation, and all the things that you can modulate are right here. And the other thing that you can do is do a DC. So this one, if I double click, if I move this manually, you will see the feedback moving as well. So if I go up in the attenuator, the feedback goes up. And if I go down, it's going to go down. So you can manually modulate this control. Now, the main purpose of this is that you can map this attenuator to something else that maybe you run your DAW, and you can, have a nice modulation just by modulating this control. Now, I'm using Bitwig, so if I use a modulator and map it to that CB feedback, I'm going to be getting just that, what we want, which is going to be a modulation from a different source, right? So this is what we want. You can see the attenuator modulating, and right here we get it. So you can use other sources to modulate the params, not just the LFO, right? Now you have, again, extended possibilities. I have a phaser right here. Now the phaser has an LFO section. So we can use this LFO to modulate something right here, right? So this is something cool that this plugins, this family of plugins give you. Right now it's active, so if I play something, we hear the phaser effect. Now I can turn off the phaser and it will do nothing, but still we can use this LFO to modulate something else. Now in this case, just to give you an example, I could use this LFO, the one that we have on this unit, to modulate the time. But maybe at the same time I want to feedback or modulate the feedback with something else. You can use the pedal, the phaser. So if I go to feedback, it's going to recognize that you have an instance of the phaser, so you can connect it to the LFO of the phaser, and then do the modulation, and notice that this is happening. It's just doing it. Now, of course, then you will need to go to the other pedal and just fine-tune the LFO. Maybe that's just too fast. I'm gonna go crazy, why not? So that's it. You can modulate other things with the LFO, or you can use other parts, from other pedals from the same family, or you can use the DC to modulate it manually. Notice right here, it says bipolar. Now, the instruction from this LFO, from this phaser, is from here and then up. So it's not bipolar, it's unipolar. Now, by clicking, I can say bipolar, and now it's going to go up and down instead of just up. So again, this will affect the whole sound. Now, the benefit of this is that we can use different rates. This one is going at this rate, but this one is really different. Alright, so that's what you can do with this pedal. It's super cool. You have, a lot of ways of creating, very special sounds with the modulation capabilities, and the addition of the settings in this case, I think it's super important because you can use it as a vintage unit, or if you want a little bit more modern, you're not stuck with just a vintage unit. Alright, so I have a tiny little synthesizer right here. Has no, it sounds like a little bit of it has a tail. It's not a reverb, it's just a synthesizer. It has compression. So I'm gonna activate the pedal and see what we can do with this. So with default settings, it's not very noticeable. Now, first of all, I'm gonna be driving it because I like it. And go down to the output, of course. Now the time is really important, and how much feedback we want to do. I'm gonna be going up in time. Maybe it's just too short, I'm gonna make it long. And maybe time sync, why not? There we go. And I'm gonna feedback a little bit more. That's the full effect. If I turn it off, super dry. So this just sounds super warm. That's the Bucket Brigade. Now I'm gonna go up in the amount so we can get a little bit of modulation. If I go really up, it's maybe too much. I'm gonna go a little bit. Now maybe we can go to settings and make it unipolar, just to make it a little bit more smooth. Turn it off. Super clean. If we go to settings, maybe make it ping pong. Or maybe just echo. We can go to modern. And it is super bright now. And we can hear the feedback, the repetitions. And this is why we love Bucket Brigade's pedals so much. Because even though if we are up in the mix, really up, and feedback, we are going really aggressively, since the repetitions are dark, they're gonna stay behind the main sound, which is the synthesizer. If I go to modern, it's just in your face, it's more rhythmical. Let's go to loose. And I'm gonna go to legacy. If I turn it off, super clean. All right. Okay, so let's try it on some vocals.
Thinking in my past,
The pedal's off.
my dreams.
Let's turn it on.
As a girl I was.
Notice how the tone changes. And I'm not doing anything right here. It's just, feedback and short times.
That I'm not thinking in my past.
So I'm gonna go down in output, a little bit of drive.
As a girl I was.
And now we have a slapback
I grew
echo.
up so fast, and I don't believe that I'm not thinking in my past, thinking in my dreams. I miss a girl I was.
So let's do a little bit of feedback.
And
maybe go up in time and see what happens.
And I don't believe that I'm not thinking in my past, thinking in my dreams. I miss a girl I was, young and dreamy. I grew up so fast, and I don't believe that I'm not thinking in my past, thinking in my dreams. I miss a girl I was, young and dreamy. I grew up so fast, and I don't believe that I'm not thinking.
I really like it with this slapback. It's just giving me a lot of tone.
As a girl I was, young and dreamy. I grew up so fast, and I don't believe that I'm not thinking in my past, thinking in.
So we get that 3D type of
As a girl
vibe.
I was, young and
Right.
dreamy.
You know what? Let's make it long and see what happens.
And I don't believe that I'm not thinking in my past, thinking in my dreams.
Let's modulate this. I'm gonna go do this really slowly.
Young and dreamy, I grew up so fast, and I don't believe that I'm not thinking in my past.
Maybe it's just too much, not right for vocals.
In my dreams, I miss a girl I was. Young and dreamy, I grew up so fast, and I don't believe
Right.
that I'm not thinking.
Alright, so that's it. That's the whole thing and what it can do. Remember, this is not about my opinion. I really like the pedal, but this is a tutorial, right? This is a deep dive. It's about showing you how to use this the delay and how it works and what it can do. So if this was useful and you really like the video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee just to say thanks, you can go to the links at the description, or you have the QRs on the screen, and you have Patreon, you have YouTube thanks, and you have PayPal, right? So see you on the next one.